There are some properties that just don't work in live action. The children's picture books by Dr. Seuss are a superlative example. Their zany morale and spontaneous storytelling have yet to prove feasible in a realistic environment. It took 2 flops for someone to finally realize, you know what, we should be utilizing CG animation to tell these stories. And in 2008, we saw the likes of Horton Hears the Who on the big screen in CG. It wasn't on the level of Pixar, but a whimsical enough delight that, for once in a featured-length Dr. Seuss adaptation, stayed true to the spirit of the source material. And now, the studio behind Despicable Me, Illumination Entertainment, have attempted to do the same, only this time based on Dr. Seuss's Lorax. And while the visuals are just as enchanting as Horton Hears the Who, a heart has been traded for a damped-down adaptation of a book that, to begin with, was already considered controversial to some people. In this story, an idealistic 12-year-old boy, Ted Wiggins, voiced by Zac Efron, lives in the walled, synthetic city of Thinidville, and in order to impress his crush, a tree enthusiast named Audrey, voiced by Taylor Swift, he sets out to find a real tree. His energetic grandmother briefs Ted on the legend of the Onceler, who will tell anyone about trees if brought 15 cents, a nail, and a shell of a great-great-great-grandfather's nail.
Why are you so interested in trees anyway? Why aren't you like other kids, breakdancing and wearing bell-bottoms and playing the Donkey Kongs?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. I just, thought it'd be kind of cool to have one,
Uh-huh. It's a girl, isn't it?
What? No.
Really? Because when a guy does something stupid once, well, that's because he's a guy. But if he does the same stupid thing twice, that's usually to impress some girl.
Hey, she is not some girl. She's a woman in high school, and she loves trees. And I'm gonna get her one.
Oh, how nice to see someone so undeterred by things like reality.
Thank you.
Ted leaves Thinidville to discover that the outside world is an abandoned wasteland, much like the pages of this film's script. The Onceler agrees to tell him about the trees on the condition that he listens to his account over multiple visits. Ted agrees, and visit by visit, the Onceler recounts the story of how he departed his family to make his fortune. After stumbling upon a truffle tree forest, he met the guardian of the forest, the Lorax, who urged him to leave the forest for cutting down a tree. The Onceler initially refused, but eventually promised never to chop another tree down again, and the two began a friendship of sorts. The Lorax is voiced by Danny DeVito, and reflects the current trend in animation by also looking like Danny DeVito. They got that uptight dentist from The Hangover, Ed Helms, to voice the Onceler, which turned out to be a very odd and unsatisfactory fit. As for Ted and Audrey, if there's a famous movie star or singer who has a distinctive voice that suits a character in an animated film, then by all means, they should voice the character. Not that Zac Efron and Taylor Swift aren't talented in other ways, but it's obvious they're here on name recognition alone, as their voice acting is plain and insipid. The movie is always a pleasure to watch for its skilled animation, but it lacks truly interesting challenges. It makes the mistake of thinking slapstick action is funny for its own sake, a mistake made by a lot of Saturday morning cartoons. Characters zooming and bouncing around are easy to write because no creative invention is required to set them in motion. Some conservatives took issue with its environmentalist message, and I had no problem with this message. My problem was in the way it was presented. First, let me say that I welcome a movie that tries to say something. I encourage films that have the ability to make the viewer think about important issues at hand. But it's one thing to take a child-friendly premise and present it with a level of respect and maturity that an adult audience can engage in as well, and another thing entirely to take something aimed at kids and mark it up with adult trappings. While I didn't love WALL-E as much as everyone else, one thing I can appreciate about that film was that it provided a social commentary on the consequences of consumer culture. Was it a little far-fetched? Maybe, but conveyed at the expense of the story? No, not at all. And they didn't have to spell it out for you either. It was underlined just enough for people to get, but not something that overshadowed the story. The Lorax, on the other hand, keeps on stressing this message over and over again. I reach a point where I'm like, okay, I get it. No need to keep on pointing to it. Dr. Seuss himself once stated, kids can see a moral coming a mile off. So it's not the message that annoyed me. Dr. Seuss also said that there's an inherent moral in any story. Although I must admit, if Dr. Seuss felt so strongly about trees, isn't the story he's telling going to be sold on pages in books which come from trees? I guess in his case that was the only option he had to tell a story and get it out to the mass public, pictures included. So, I don't know, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say he probably would have wanted the Lorax to exclusively be an online book or something. That is, if everyone had internet back then like they do today. But Universal and Illumination have no excuse for their blatant hypocrisy, because What kind of products did they use to promote their movie? 7th generation diapers? IHOP breakfast items? Mazda SUVs? Way to stay green. Take away the environmentalist propaganda and hypocrisy, and you're still left with a pretty empty time at the movies that may please kids, but that's about it. And that's why the Lorax gets 2.5 bugles out of 5.